One of the most common complaints I hear from Fortune 500 executives is they're missing a key tool in their toolkit. It's the lack of thought leadership, and more specifically, a personal brand. Now, I know you'll run for the hills when you hear the phrase personal brand because it reminds you of Mr. Beast's pizza challenges or Kim Kardashian's thirst traps. Nothing to do with a sophisticated professional that's trying to grow their influence. And though we hate to admit it, when someone Googles you, whatever they see on that front page is your personal brand. Now, in this episode, I'm joined by an online brand strategist and a good friend of mine, Shanté Coffield. She's going to share with you how a personal brand can showcase your knowledge, attract unique opportunities for you, and help you build relationships with the important professionals in your field. And best of all, we'll show you how to do it in a way that is effortless, won't lead to burnout, and is aligned with how you want to spend your time. Hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Examine Life podcast, where we take some of life's thorniest questions and answer them in a philosophical and pragmatic way so that you can lead a more productive, examined, and joyful life. Today's question, do you need a personal brand? And I'm joined by my friend, my neighbor, the one and only Shanté Coffield. What's up, friend?
I love that we can say neighbor because it's true.
We're literally neighbors.
It's not like Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. It's like actually like you live down the street, around the corner, down the street. Love it.
It's good to see you, friend. How are you?
Always great to see you. Stoked and honored to be here, truly.
Oh, man. So I'm going to, before we jump into the question, I'm going to set the stage on how we met. So it was a year and change ago. We were at the ConvertKit Craft and Commerce conference. Everyone was just oozing out of this kind of post-COVID, let's meet people in real life again. And I go onto the main stage. I think I'm a few minutes late. And there is Shante. And she's wearing this neon hat and this like crazy motherfucking koi fish Japanese tattoo on the big screen. There's this neon green Jeep.
Yes.
There's shots of volleyball. And then she says, yeah, I'm in Redondo Beach. I'm in Hermosa Beach. I'm like, that's literally where I live. I'm like, no, we gotta be friends. So that was and then I got to meet your beautiful truck, your beautiful neon truck.
No one knew you were gonna say that. They were waiting for like you to say a person just now.
Person or
beautiful truck. My Jeep, Peggy.
Your Jeep, Peggy. And it's like when you pull into my driveway, when we go for our beach walks, all I hear is the Rihanna like da 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 da, like all of the lights. So anyway, that's my introduction. But let me ask you: you are always out there playing beach volleyball every fucking day. It seems like
literally, yeah.
So you meet some new friends on the beach volleyball court. Do you call it a court? Even though it's sand. On the beach volleyball beach, and they're like, Shanté, how do you spend your time? How do you answer that question?
So honestly depends on who's asking it. So my background is as a physical therapist, and I very rarely, if ever, say that because then people will be like, "Oh, my back kind of hurts." So I don't bring that up. And usually I'll just tell people like, "Hey, I do Instagram," and then in my free time, if they're at the beach, they know. In my free time, I'm here trying to get better at volleyball because I actually didn't pick volleyball up until COVID, right before COVID, and then everything shut down and opened up again. So I'm like trying to catch up to everybody else that started when they were like 7, and I'm like, I got a lot of time to try and make up. So that's how I tell them.
That's like me in surfing, where I started at I moved here 5 years ago. So I started at 39. And these little groms, you've seen these kids, these blonde-haired,
There you go. That's always the long blonde hair,
the blue eyes.
Always.
Lisa always says she's like they look androgynous.
Always.
Like running around barefoot with their surfboards.
Yes, that's literally it. Literally it. And you're like,
so what do you mean? You said I do Instagram?
I do Instagram, yeah.
So
it's usually the easiest thing to tell people in terms of if they also asking for business. I'm kind of like what I do for work. I do Instagram. So officially, I help physical therapists. Usually I call them health and fitness professionals. But again, my background is a PT. So it's PTs, chiros, trainers, yoga people, whoever. Health and fitness pros. I help them build profitable online brands. And usually the main way that I do that is through helping them with starting off by helping them build their social media presence. And my platform of choice, as you know, is Instagram. So I'll just tell people I do Instagram. Because most people here, while people do, I think, have Peter Pan syndrome here, which I kind of love, and people are super accepting of like whatever it is that you do, most people have more traditional jobs.
Yep.
And so it's like, can be difficult to explain what you do. So I'm just like, I do Instagram. And they're like, oh, okay.
We're the weirdos, the misfits, the truants, right?
But I'm like, I do Instagram.
The funny thing about your Instagram, and everyone will put in the show notes, should and will go follow you. The funny thing about your Instagram, this is going to tie to our question, do you need a personal brand, is you're prolific. And I've only known you for a year. I think I've seen, or you said you've been on for 8 years or
since
decade.
2014,
2014. So you've been on Instagram for 9 years. You are prolific. And you, from how I know you, seem to have one of the healthiest relationships with Instagram. And so I see a lot of your meals. I know your partner and your cat and what you're working on and what you're selling. And we see the same pink sunset, that 9/11 pink sunset.
Gosh, that was just unbelievable.
Oh man, it was, And New York City had a double rainbow. I don't know if you saw that viral.
I didn't.
Double rainbow on 9/11. This will come out in November, but on 9/11 it was a double rainbow.
It's incredible.
But how do you integrate this? And I'll show you my cards after. But how do you integrate this medium that can be very invasive into one's personal life, and really like do it so prolifically, so effortlessly, and again from an outsider, what looks like very healthily?
Totally. Like, I think the answer comes, and we were talking about before, that you're in a phase right now where you're like, I'm doing it. If it's fun, I'm doing more of it. If it's not fun, I'm doing less of it. That's how I've always approached Instagram. And I think that's what allows me to be prolific, is because I actually enjoy it. At this point, there's a habit that's been established. So there's ease. There's my best friend and business partner, Jill, her ex-husband, Jade, says easy is earned. And I love that. Like, absolutely love that quote. Easy is earned. I love it. And so there is an ease with creating content. It may not be like the most inspired content, but if we're looking at just having the habit and staying consistent, there's ease with that now because I've done it for 9 years.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, because I genuinely enjoyed it, I will say, starting 9 years ago, it was different. It is different, was different than starting now. There was far less people to compare yourself to. Like, starting an online business wasn't a thing. I started Instagram, started using it to connect with people, not because I wanted to have this massive presence and build this brand or this business. So in terms of how I can do it, one, because I enjoy it, and being prolific with it, I think there's twofold. One, I enjoy it, but two, like, it's something that comes easily. Like, I do feel that I have range in terms of, I like being on camera. I like speaking. You met me. I was a speaker. I do like writing. I don't like it as much, which is great because I don't have to do it as much. I can do a longer caption or not. We have all these different parts of the platform, and I genuinely enjoy using them. I think in terms of the healthy side of it, I think it's the same thing. Like, I am very stubborn, and I will not do something that I don't enjoy. And if Instagram was bringing me headaches and heartaches and all of that, I wouldn't be doing it. And when I teach other people about using Instagram, that's a big thing. I'm talking to them, and I'm like, curate your experience. Like, life is short. Don't be doing shit you hate. Curate it. Follow cat accounts, follow surf accounts, and enjoy the time that you have there, because our time is limited.
Yeah. Go back. Ease is, ease is earned.
Easy is earned. Easy is earned.
So actually, I had to like sit and think of it. Like, deconstruct that specifically.
Totally.
Because I think that applies to anything.
Totally. And I think that we can look at it from the outside and then from the actual person. And so if we're looking from an outsider, if I was to look at you and be like, man, he's just like, this looks so easy when he does stuff, and he can write, you're so prolific with content creation, and when you want to jump into something, you're just able to do it. That's been years and years of you doing this and starting things and putting in the time and like stumbling over things, and now knowing that you can trust yourself on the other side of things. So that outward ease that I'm seeing, that's earned, right? We all know what a Pinterest fail is, and you have like a master does something, you're like, I could totally do that because it looks easy, right? We watch the Olympics and we're like, I could do that. We watch beach volleyball. I could do that because they're professionals. It looks easy. It's earned. And then we go do it and we're like, this is exceptionally hard. I don't know if I want to do this anymore. So on that, from the outside, it's that. And I think from the inside, it's like the person doing that. I think that's very much the same of, you have to put in the reps. Anything that you want, to accomplish, it's going to take work. And then there will be that foundational ease, right? I think that there's kind of two parts to that quote, where the first part is, yes, easy is earned, where these things that become routine and the foundation becoming easy, that is earned. You have to put in work. I think that anyone that's ever worked for something also knows that as you get better, the goalposts typically move with you, the chains move with you. And so in order to get to that next level or get that next goal, you still have to work hard. But that stuff that's behind you, or if you want to say this exact same, that's pretty easy.
I love that. I think often two analogies, it's like brushing your teeth. It's like no one needs a gamification app to brush your teeth, a habit tracker, a reminder, right? You don't need any of that stuff. It's because you've internalized the behavior. You, myself, people who make exercise, fitness a priority. I don't have to gamify exercise. I just know that I do it and I need to do it and I want to do it. So there's that pull, right? And so there's definitely an element of that. I think one of the guiding questions that goes alongside that I encourage, and we'll pivot back to the actual question, is what if it was easy, right? Like that's a question. And you can see that, like you might have noticed on the podcast, I do a cold open.
I love
Inspired by Tim Dillon. I don't even, you say you add a buffer at the end and the beginning. I don't even add a buffer. I just go straight into it. Sometimes I fuck it up, but I'm like,
I love it. Run live. I love it.
That intro doesn't move the needle on the podcast. And if I'm still worrying about the edit and the this and the music and that, I've already lost the script on it. So why don't I lean into the thing that I'm good at, is my rendition of Rihanna's All of the Lights when Peggy the Jeep rolls into my, that's what I'm naturally good at.
It's a
my
skill.
Daughter would disagree.
That's a skill.
But
that is a skill you have.
I disagree. So, all right, so let's go back to this question. The question is, do you need a personal brand?
Yep.
And I want to set the stage with you, because from my corporate life, and you have this, had this with your PT life, your former PT life, physical therapist life. For my corporate life, people look at what I built over 8 years and like, oh, I want something like that. I'd like to have a newsletter. I'd like to have I'd like to post daily on LinkedIn and so on. To the point that multiple people at Fortune, these are not execs, but like VP level at Fortune 500 companies, have said to me, a promotion to the next tier requires that I have thought leadership. So their bosses are telling, these are, 30 people in their mid 30s, 40s, where their bosses are telling them, like, you're not going to make it to the next level until the market sees you as a thought leader.
Yep.
And they're just like, they're terrified because, you and I live in this world. It's like, oh, turn on a TikTok account. Like it sucks. It's hell. But like, we know what would need to be done. But for them, it's like, I'm not a writer. I'm not a this cringe, compliance. My mom is going to see this.
That's so interesting. It's
I'd
so
love
interesting
for us to like reset the conversation into this group.
I love this.
So let's say it.
Love this. On so many levels.
What do you love? What do you love about it?
So for those of you, if you are watching and you see me looking away from the camera, so I have whiteboards all over. But I have one on my desk and I'm writing things down so I don't forget them because it will just go away. But your original question of, do you need to have a personal brand? I hope this doesn't cut the episode short, but the answer is, you already have a personal brand. The question is, do you need or want to monetize it? Right? Everyone has a personal, you're alive, you have a personal brand.
Yeah.
Right? To me,
you have a name.
Brand, that's it. That's literally it. Like, to me, a brand is simply a unique entity, right? Or an entity with a unique identity. And so people are like, I'm not unique. And I'm like, you are. If we're going to go into like NFTs, like you are unique in that regard. So you already have one, whether you like it or not, whether you want it or not. The question is, do you want to do something with it? Do you want to have other people Do you want to monetize it? Do you want to actually turn this into some sort of business? The thing that I really love that you said was about thought leadership. And to me, in the way you've phrased it and we're talking about it, I wrote down thought leadership equals the willingness to hit publish. Like, that's all it is. Because they didn't say you need to have a massive following. They said you need to have thought leadership. So, like, no, it's so funny when you start working with people on content creation and building an actual, strategically and intentionally building their brand. They hold these two things that are opposite, and they hold them in their hands. And one of them is, I'm scared to be seen. That's why they don't want to hit publish. You said it, like, my mom's going to see it, my spouse is going to judge me. And then on the other hand, once they start publishing, then they get upset because they're like, nobody's seeing it. And I'm like, well, which one is it?
Yes.
What is it, this one? Or is it this one? What do we want? So
that's Whitman's, but we contain multitudes, right?
It's so fun to watch that with people. And definitely the people that can, like, toss this one aside faster. They progress through it faster. And I've often seen that it's older people because they don't give a fuck anymore. So when I say older people, I have people I work with, they're in their 70s and they're using social media and they're just like, I don't care what people think. Like, I have something to say.
That's funny. So, side point on that. We did an episode about sex.
Oh yeah.
And one of the questions was about swingers. And I said, what's the truth, the secret about swingers? And the guest, Natasha, said, it's way more common than you think. And it's way older than you think, because those are the people. It's like the 70-year-old hitting publish. It's like they're comfortable with what their body looks like. They're comfortable in their relationship. They're past all. They're not like, oh, is someone looking at the way this part of my body is, flabby? Yeah, there's no fucks given.
None. Right? They don't. They're like realize they're like, I'm at the end of things. Like, let's just enjoy where I'm currently at.
All right, so you got these failure to be seen, and then
scared to be seen, but then they're also like, but no one's seeing it. And I'm like, well, are you scared then, or you want more people to see you? And like, which one are you going to lean into? And I'm going to hold you accountable to that. Okay, then it's this one. Cool. Then we're going to. The answer is always get prolific with content creation, right?
Yeah.
The beginning is yes, every piece of content. Then one, it's scary, but. Like I said earlier, I am a physical therapist by trade, so we take things from our past lives, absolutely, our past lives, yes, but also our past professions. And so within PT, you understand that when you're working with someone, you titrate things, right? And we have graded exposure. The nervous system controls everything, and we have to show the nervous system that we are safe doing these things.
No.
Right? This is why it is also important to do the things, because we've proved to our nervous system, I can handle the outcome. That's, at the end of the day, what is true confidence, where it comes from. Confidence is not believing you can do the thing. It's knowing you can handle the outcome. So the easiest way to think about that from a PT or movement perspective is jumping. We will jump higher if we know we can attenuate the landing, right? If you know you're not going to like break your legs off, you'll jump.
Yeah.
But if you're like, I don't know about that consequence, that outcome, you won't jump as high. So like from a very if you want to nerd out for a second, because I know you've done box jumps before. Right? If I just have you right now just do a standing high jump as high as you can, awesome. If I had you do what's called a depth drop or just like a box drop, and you stand on top of the box and then you just drop down and you land. If you then just jumped in place, your vertical would go up. It wouldn't go by like a foot, but it would go up because your nervous system said, okay, I can handle landing. So I'm going to give you more to jump up because I know you can handle the forces of this landing. That's exposure to everything. That's when people are trying to create content. That's why I'm like, cool, we're going to do a little bit at a time, and you're going to show your nervous system that you're not going to die. And then it'll give you a little more, and it'll give you a little more, and it'll give you a little bit more, and it'll give you a little more. You said something earlier that was so profound, and that's why I was like, this is a skill. You are able to trust yourself to handle the outcome. And this is a skill. This is from all the years. I listened to the podcast you talked about, feeling safe and tying into financial situations and getting beaten up and things like that. You have gone through years of testing and then knowing you can handle the outcome. So when you're like, I'm going to start a podcast, and it's fine. I don't have the buffer, the bumpers on the end, and I don't have this, but I'm going to be okay. Yeah. Other people aren't there yet. And for some people, it takes them incredibly long incredibly long to get there.
Well, I love that because you said you're like titrating safety, like like psychological,
but also psychological. Yeah, but definitely
safety. And so my wife always says, you're not afraid of being cringe. I'm like, nope,
No.
I'm not afraid of being cringe. I don't care. I do care. I mean, I do care how people think about me, but there's something about content where maybe it's like emotional disassociation, or it just reps. It's just like knowing that it's just nothing matters. What do you think for someone? So like, let's go back to this like Fortune 500 exec, or you've seen it in your clients. Like, what fear dominates? Is it the fear of not being seen, or the fear of being seen?
It's the fear of being seen. Absolutely. It's always ultimately, when I say being seen, it's not so much like going viral, it's that people seeing you. Who are you? That is what people are ultimately afraid of. And I think that if we go with, let's say, Fortune 500 folks and people that have followed a more laid out and like strategic and more just like, maybe for some people it was chosen for them and it was just like, this is expected. You do the next thing, you do the next thing, you do the next thing, you do the next thing. To diverge from that, that's terrifying. And then to actually be seen for like, what do you actually think? And they maybe, especially I see this in my female clients. I have mostly female clients. There are people that were raised and socialized female. No one was ever asked, what's your opinion? Or what do you think about this? They're traditionally told, take up less space. So suddenly it's like, what do you think? What's your opinion on this? And it's terrifying for people. They don't know what's on the other side of that because they haven't ever
never practiced it.
Ever.
Wow.
Ever. So from a content perspective, like if you're going from a very, quote unquote, we'll say straight and narrow, where it's like, do this, go to school, take a test, do this things. And now suddenly it's like, have this idea from that's out here. That's your own thought. That's away from this. Scary. They don't know.
So don't come in hot with like your view on Trump or Robert Kennedy.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying. Like,
so what is the baby step? I love how you juxtapose it against an audience that I'm much less familiar with, is, like a female audience or socialized female. And you have that fear, because it isn't part of that fear of rejection. It's like, I reject you, and then you're not safe and you're not loved 100%. And like all that stuff.
At the end of the day, it all comes down to that. We are a social species inherently, and we want to belong. And there's definitely fear of, if I do this, I will not belong, or I will be, I'm going to get made fun of. And I think that if you've grown up maybe experiencing that, and then you got through that, then you have some resilience and you're willing to do other things. You're like, actually, I'll be fine. If you have a very strong support system that also supports you, like supports you, not supports you if you do this, but unconditionally supports you, not under the conditions that you do X, Y, and Z, you're more willing to do it because you're like, I can handle the outcome. If those people don't like me, these people still will. Like, you have this safety net that's there.
It's funny because I have a friend who she's been wanting to post on Instagram for so long, and all she can think about is other people talking about her posts.
Totally.
Which probably is a pretty common fear on Instagram.
It's the number one thing. It's the number one thing.
It's like someone else calling you cringe.
Yes.
And it's this made-up conversation.
Yes.
And again, I don't suffer from that. I have a lot of insecurities. That's not one of them. Like, what is happening in that moment when you're imagining? So you want to put yourself out there, and all you can imagine is other people talking about how cringe you are. Yes. But there's a step further. There is a point of reference, because occasionally someone does send you someone's, and you're like, look, can you believe they've fallen this far? You've done it.
You've done it yourself.
Like, break down that,
absolutely,
you've done it yourself.
I mean, I think, again, it ties into wanting to belong and, the fear that someone's going to say something and then we don't belong. Like, I think it's literally as simple as that. And the reason that we think about all the bad things is because that is actually science, right? We, by nature, look at we have negativity bias. It keeps us alive. Like, it's actually not a bad thing that we have this. We're like, what's the worst that can happen? I'm going to hit by a car. I should not do that then.
Yeah.
Keeps us alive. But in this case, we go to that negativity bias and then we just fixate on that. And we never work to create evidence of anything otherwise. It is a conscious choice, right? Like, people will listen to all the podcasts and read all the books and go to the courses. And it's like, you can do all of that and psychoanalyze all you want. at the end of the day, the answer is action. And action will always be the antidote. You have to go and do the thing and prove to your nervous system that it is safe. Reading about something doesn't make your nervous system ultimately feel safe. You have to experience it firsthand. So, yes, we can talk to the people and support them, but they will only ever start to feel like that and believe it. Also, some folks, let's say, they'll only ever start to feel it when they do it. And then some of those folks have to make a decision whether or not to believe the evidence. I've seen that's like the second type of person, where some people like generate evidence and then they're like, okay, I can do it. And then there's other people that generate evidence and they're like, they're still unsure. And so, Jill, I know I reference her a lot. I'm always around her, but one of the things she said, I did a thread about this the other day. One of the things that Jill says is, you get to keep what you fight for, right? And so to that end, if you fight for your insecurities, you get to keep them. So if you're like, at some point you have to choose to believe the evidence that you created. Or if you don't want to, then that's where you're going to stay.
Well, what's the evidence in this case? Is it that you are
creating content and then you didn't die?
Oh,
right.
God.
So you create the content and
you're still
fine.
You're still loved.
You're still okay. One of the things that would be helpful is at some point you're going to get a bad comment.
Yeah.
Deal with it. You got to learn how to deal with it. At some point, if you go surfing, you're going to fucking wipe out. You have to experience it and deal with it. And then you're like, okay, but I didn't die. And here I go. If you decide actually that hurts so much, I don't want to do it ever again. Amazing. You've learned that. Go do something else.
Yeah. So what does that baby step look like? Obviously, you're not going to come in hot. You're not going to come in hot and start, talking about COVID vaccines or, pick the
maybe
pick
you
the
are,
type,
but probably not.
pick the divisive topic du jour, right? CRT in Florida or whatever.
Right.
But what would be, if you're comfortable, you could just sticking with our Fortune 500 exec or one of you, what would be the first step? How would you coach that person?
And this ties into what we were talking about earlier, because you said, what if it was easy? And I would say that's where you start.
Yeah.
That's exactly where you start. So with clients, I would say, what's the easiest thing for you to do? What's the easiest way for you to create? I don't care what's expected of you. I don't care what your goal is in 5 years from now. Right now, in this moment, what's the easiest? You like talking? Then probably you're going to record something. You like writing? Okay, then we're going to go the writing route. You like video? Okay, then we're probably going to record something. I don't care. It's just going to be what is easy. We're going to lean into that. I will ask them in terms of frequency, because like you said earlier, I am prolific, but I think that's also just a gift. I think you're the same way. So I'm not going to be like, you got to do 1 million. I will ask people, what do you think you could commit to creation-wise if you were operating at 50% capacity? And if they're like, I could post once a week, okay, then I'm like, then that's your goal, is once a week. And if you want to do more because you're so inspired, great. Otherwise, I know you're 50%, you can hit that and it will look like whatever is easy. So we're going to lower the barrier so much. And what's interesting is let's say if we were dealing with someone that's Fortune 500 or someone that's high achieving, they're going to think it's not enough, because that same question you asked earlier, what if it's easy? It's okay. If it's easy, it's achievable. And we're going to look to build momentum, because momentum is going to be one of the best motivators that you have.
Yeah. And I think about that for myself, because I've been doing this for 8 years. And I want to keep doing my version of this, until they carry me out.
Exactly. Yes.
And so it has to be easy. If it's not easy, I'm fucked.
You're going to stop. So much friction.
I'm fucked. And there are places like TikTok, not easy. I stopped. I tried.
It wasn't for me.
I tried. It's too hard.
That wasn't for me.
But I do love that, and I love that you pointed out that the high achiever is gonna say you'd be like, one is easy. They're like, that's too easy. K does 4. We're like, yeah, K's been doing this for a decade.
Great. It's also him. It's his journey. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, so
put on the blinders. I do understand that demographic. Listen, I compare everything to sports. As a Division I athlete, I when I got my doctorate, I understand achieving and pushing and competing. I understand the value of that, absolutely. But I also understand that it is a long play game, and the person who wins is the person who can stay in the game the longest, hands down.
Who do you look at in the online world and be like, that person lived what we just discussed? Stay true to themselves, staying power, didn't chase
my self-appointed mentor, he's in the movement space, so your audience probably doesn't know him. His name is Perry Nicholson. He's a chiropractor. He's stopped chasing pain on Instagram, and he has been like a guiding light for me since day one. I text him quite frequently, so I got to work with him. I work for this company called Rock Tape. So if any of you are familiar with like the colorful tape that people wear, Rock Tape is a brand that makes that. And so I was a lead instructor for them. I went around the world, honestly, teaching to other health and movement professionals. But Perry Nicholson was a lead instructor at the time. And actually, he's how I got into the company. I met him through social media and we became friends. I'm like, you're my self-appointed mentor. And I will text him from time to time and just be like, thank you for taking the arrows. Like, I don't do the movement side of things anymore, but he does. And he's always ahead of the curve. Okay. He's always willing to be ahead of the curve and like do these things. And people will just come for him. Wow. And then a year, 2 years later, you see him doing the same thing that he was talking about. And he's always just stayed true. And he helps so many people. Like, he's definitely been a guiding light. For sure.
I love that. How long do you think his online career has been? Like a decade?
I mean, it's before
plus?
me.
So
when I came onto Instagram, he was already there. If I look at his profile, I think he probably has like 8,000 posts. Like, dude, you want to talk about prolific? Wow. Dude is prolific. Like,
all right, we'll put his name in the show notes. I think of a much more mainstream one is Tim Ferriss. And I've admired, I went through my Tim Ferriss fanboy.
Yeah, we all did.
We all did.
We got 4 hour work week.
You and I also have like the new Tim Ferriss is Huberman, and you and I have our views on Huberman, but we won't go there today. But what I do admire about Tim Ferriss is that he was, in his 20s, he was optimize. And look, in your 20s, most people are optimize. I was optimize. And then in his 30s, he probably was more like business, like how do you make money, how do you invest, and all that. And then I really respect, and I've stopped listening to him for the most part, probably a decade or 7 years ago. Yeah. But his new phase is about like sexual trauma, sexual abuse.
Is it really?
Yeah. So he was molested as a kid by a babysitter, I think. This is all obviously, it's all public.
Yeah, obviously.
And he's been processing it like in real time on his episodes. And, some people might say that it's a performative, like for clicks and all that. I mean, I don't know. He's fucking rich. Like he doesn't need to chase clicks at this point. He's an early investor in Uber. So, but it's just, and so that's taken him down this one path of like psychedelics, another path of like trauma and healing, another path. And I can imagine that a lot of his audience is like, bro, like, teach me about the 4-hour work week. And he's probably so over, he's so over it. So I love that. And he talks about, I've heard him talk on he's been a few interviews where he's like, look, I like podcasting because it's my terms. I carry my equipment, and he doesn't even do video podcasting. I carry my equipment in my bag. And if we happen to be in the same city, we whip it out and we have a podcast.
I think that's such a good example also, Khe, of easy as earned. So that pivot that he's done is because he worked so hard and he's been around for so long, right? Like the average person, if you're just starting out and you're strategically building a personal brand, you cannot jump around like that, right? You need to stay going in a singular direction to build trust. If you're like over here and you're over here talking about this, it's very difficult to build trust behind that. All right, so we do want to niche down, and this doesn't have to be niche down by demographic, but like speaking about something in particular, specifically.
And you even challenged me to do that, which we could talk about.
To be like, how can we like just be a little bit more specific with, and sometimes it's the problem we're solving, it's not actually who we're solving it for. Yeah. But with him, he's able to now talk about that because once you have broken through the trust barrier, you can go in whatever direction you want. And so like, yes, if any of you listening to this, maybe you're going through this or you're like want to go in a different direction, I encourage you, stick with one thing long enough to break through the trust barrier, and then you can go in whatever direction you want. I broke the trust barrier as the movement maestro. It was with physical therapists and movement professionals. With the movement side of things, I was teaching them about that. Yeah. But I broke through that barrier, and then I was like, I actually don't care about hip flexors anymore. I don't want to talk about them. I'm done. But
that was your 4-hour work week, was hip flexors?
I was, man.
Because I got some fucked up hip. It's like, don't tell anyone I got some fucked up hip flexors that could need some love right now, right?
I'm like, you want to break the internet? Talk about hip flexors. Everybody's flexed out. I already know. I know how to go viral. Talk about hip flexors and hamstrings. Like, But I was like, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
I'm going to go into this, I'm more on this online business side of things. And the people came with me because I had broken through the trust barrier. That's the same thing with Tim, that like the core audience goes with him. And like, even though people are like, but I want to hear about 4-Hour Work Week. Yes, but he doesn't want to talk about it. And
then be like, go read the old stuff, right?
Go read it. It's
go read the
there.
book. It's still there.
It's still there.
I love that. So let's go. I love this. So let's go back to our exec. Let's name them. Like I was gonna like Frank the Tank, like Frank the exec, Eddie the exec, right? Like such corny dad alliterations. Fucking K, man. Okay, so Eddie the exec. So let's say what I've found with those people, because they're usually kind of like late 30s men in my case. It's not video. They kind of didn't grow up like phones, Instagram, video. It's usually words, which means video is super awkward. So it's words and maybe pictures at best. And so I'll normally, and I don't do this for work. This is just what I tell them for fun. I'm like, well, what are the 10 questions that you get asked all the time?
Yep.
And then just like find a way to talk about that question on LinkedIn. It could be a little story. It could be a list of tips. It could be the question, literally the question. It doesn't, like at this point, it doesn't fucking matter. It literally doesn't matter. It's like, it's almost, like James Clear has this thing in Atomic Habits where he's like, if you want to get fit, the first thing you do is you set your alarm at the time you want to go to the gym, and then you get out of bed, and then you get back into bed.
You build that habit. Yeah.
And then like 10 days later, you get out of bed and you put your clothes on. And then like 10 days later, you drive to the gym, but you actually don't work out.
Okay.
And then like 30 days later, you like do a 10-minute workout. And so I think it's that same thing.
Absolutely.
It's just like that thing. But so here's what happens then, because they get disillusioned so quickly, is because they're going to spend so much time thinking about it. As they should, it's a new muscle to train.
Totally.
And then it's going to be crickets. It's going to have like 3, 1 like.
Yeah, it's that many. Maybe 0.
Maybe 0. Maybe no one will even see it. It's literally possible no one will see it.
Yeah.
So that goes to the other fear, where it's like, now I put myself, I cross the chasm to put myself out there, and now no one wants to see.
Yeah,
so like, so what do we tell them then?
It's so interesting. Yes. I mean, if that's their attitude, yes. I take another quote from one of my good friends, Meredith Root, which is have expectations of effort, not outcome. I think that when people go in, and if their expectation is that someone wants to see it, it's just a very like self-aggrandizing, like very, what's the word?
Narcissistic.
I'm trying to think of the word where there's like, it'll come to me. But when you have this expectation that that you deserve this audience, right? You're setting yourself up for failure. Just because you have a point to make doesn't mean you deserve an audience. And maybe this is very difficult for people that are traditionally in power or that are, very high achievers to get, but that's the truth, right? Just because you have an opinion doesn't mean you deserve an audience. So if you go into it having expectations of effort, and the effort is, I am going to show up and do this thing, and then when you do that, you check the box and you pat yourself on the back and you go on to the next day. That is how you're going to succeed. So one of the coolest things for me is if I am working with someone that has like an athletic background, especially if they've played at a high level, you can speak to them like that.
Yeah.
And be like, you don't go to the gym expecting you're going to have muscles tomorrow.
Yeah.
So stop doing that here. Stop having this entitled, that's the word, this feeling of an entitlement. Like, work doesn't entitle you to the outcome. Exactly. Like, you have expectations of effort, not outcome. And I am very, very big about managing expectations as it relates to timelines. I know that there are coaches out there and people just want to sell things, and they'll be like, $10,000 a month, which is just a random number, $10,000 a month in 3 months. And I'm like, that's a lie. If you hit a $10,000 a month in 3 years, that's amazing with traditional creator approach to things. Yep. And if people don't want to hear that, I'm like, then go spend your money somewhere else and you'll come back to me after that thing doesn't work. Like, that is not reality. I've been in the game long enough and coached enough people. So I am just about being very honest with them and saying, this is what happens. This is how it is. And if you do want this like fast results, go waste your time trying it. I never discourage people from trying that shit either. I'm like, you want to try it? Go ahead.
You have to experience it.
Go ahead.
What do you think? I mean, I know this is kind of let's use Instagram. Let's say someone is, Executive Eddie is let's say 2 posts a week. And at what point is there a benchmark to be like, after 6 months, you should start to see something like, because the opposite of that is that you do see people that post into the void for what seems like forever.
Yeah.
And burn out or so like, how do you like keep that trade-off of like iterating with
I think there's a few things. I think that one, I want to acknowledge that executive Eddie probably likes numbers. And so when you're coaching, you're trying to meet people where they're at, but that's also where they're, I'll throw numbers of like, give it a minimum of 18 months of consistent, concerted effort. And I'm talking posting daily. You can't commit to that. Then let's expand. You're posting once a week. Okay, then multiply that by 7. Before you decide if it's worth it or not. I want consistency. I want you to be prolific. Like, you want numbers? Here are the numbers. And then the thing that I want them to focus on are other metrics, because the thing with Instagram is that it is exactly like going to a casino. The house always wins, right? They have you pulling that stupid lever and you don't know what's going to do well. You can think to yourself, I figured it out. But this is the same reason you see people like posting forever into the void, because like it does that. Right? If you could figure it out, people would stop using it. So this is why you have that intermittent positive reinforcement, where sometimes you do a post and it does really well. And other times you don't. You do a post and it doesn't do really well, right? It needs to be like that so that you keep coming back for that hit. TikTok, I will say, kind of as an aside, TikTok was smart in that they like quote unquote opened up the algorithm. So like in the beginning, everyone's posts seemingly like went viral.
You could get rich overnight.
So I'm like, okay, realizing that people need to realize that the currency that they were trading in was attention. But all attention is not created equally. I care about, like my bio says, and we said earlier, what do I do? Creating a profitable personal brand. I want to know what your bank account looks like, because likes don't pay your bills. So when it comes to people looking at metrics, I will actually say, okay, give yourself 18 months minimum, consistent, concerted effort before you decide if it's worth it. But I want you to use metrics like, how easy is it for you to post? How clear are you now on your message? How much do you know what you want to talk about? Because if you've improved in those things, it's definitely worth it. And then they'll keep going.
I think, you know, what you just said, likes don't pay the bills.
You don't pay your bills.
And I think that this is even, I'll say for me, even something that I'm just starting to realize 8 years into it. You know, I don't play the volume game per se, because I'm not that.
It's a tough game.
I'm not that prolific in that sense. Like, those people need to post all the time.
All the time.
But I do get caught up with, you know, big numbers. I mean, I like big numbers. And so I like the big numbers. But what I've realized, and I've always known this about myself and my content. Look, I write to a very wealthy audience with a very specific set of problems. There's 2 things about that. That's not that big of a group.
That, right there.
And that group is very wealthy.
There you go. So
and
you're okay.
So, like, I have
business fans.
I have coaching clients who have like literally my fee, which is high, is like you and me buying a Coke. You know, like it's that insignificant to them.
Exactly. 100%.
And I forget that. It's an interesting thing for me, because a lot of those people aren't even online. So you could almost make this argument that like, hey, and I wouldn't do this because I love the online game, but you could always make the argument that, hey, you probably would be better off like going to physical conferences where you know like this type of person hang out at the bar after, strike up a conversation, and then maybe point them to your blog. But almost like the opposite way that I've been doing it now, which is like leading with my writing and then seeing. I don't want to do that.
I would always argue for the second and what you do, because I think that if we're purely looking at customer acquisition and like what's the most efficient, then seemingly if we're just looking at numbers kind of in a vacuum, then go to the bar where they actually are. But part of your appeal is that you're a writer and that you live this surfing life and that you have these other things and that you're a thought leader and you're willing to hit publish. So if you didn't do those things and you went to the bar and had the conversations, they'd be like, cool.
Then I'm just like, hey, like resting on my old laurals. Like I used to do this. And it's this like interesting synergy that like, I even think of, I think I'm selling myself short because a lot of my coaching clients, they might not be active readers of my blog, but they get the email and that's just, they respect, they see it, and so they are. And so there is that thing.
the willingness to hit publish is a big deal, to the point where some of the posts that do very well on Instagram are tweets that people have screenshotted and they put up on Instagram. I will contend that from getting a client perspective, especially if it's in the coaching realm, the main benefit or power of that post is not that it has all these likes. It's not anything about the post. It's the fact that you had the balls to say the thing twice, because you said it on Twitter and then you brought it over here and made a post about it. And subconsciously people are like, wow, like this person had the audacity to quote themselves twice. There's so much power in that.
I thought you were going to say that it's like the billboard effect. That's like, just seeing your name in the feed. It's like kind of like getting I didn't.
For sure. But I feel like read between the lines and like we go from like the emotional side and like what people why they're actually like choosing you. It's because they're like, holy shit, this guy has the confidence to hit publish twice.
Yeah.
And it's on his own
I
stuff.
love that. So if we go back to Executive Eddie, and Executive Eddie's not playing, like he's not trying to be the next Tim Ferriss. Like that's not, he has a full-time job and all that. So he needs to narrow down like who he wants
Big
to
time.
like. He basically has to ask the question, which is actually a great question that a lot of people online don't ask, is like, who do I want to read this? And what's the next action that I want them to take?
100%. I mean, I would start with the first question, right? It's just, who do I want to write to? And who do I want to write to right now? Basically giving themselves permission to change, because for some people that's like scary. So who do I want to write to right now? And like from a writing perspective, from an email perspective, that's actually a very good approach, is to write to one person. Nothing like I'm writing to all these people that are like this. No, you're literally writing to the other person, Tom, right? Just for that one person. And you keep going, you see who starts reading it, and then because content is bait. And so you see what kind of fish it attracts. And if you're like, I don't want those fish, then you change the bait. Or if you're like, these fish are great, then you sell them something.
Yeah. And do you think that, are you writing in this case? Because I think people in this situation are not even used to thinking in terms of what marketers might say, like avatars or psychographics or all that. Are you saying to Executive Eddie, like you want other people in consumer products who are around your level of seniority, like that's
if
who
that's
you want
who
to
he wants to write to. Yeah, like I think the thing that's so cool, I love content creation, is the freedom that it can bring for people. And maybe Executive Eddie, we'll say with fish, likes fishing. And I'm like, start your fucking fishing blog then.
Yes.
Go ahead. Do that. Because again, we're thinking about what comes easily. But then we start to see, especially in this demographic, the fear of being seen, because they're like, but people don't know that I'm a fisherman, and like they're going to judge me because I like wear these gaiters sometimes. And I'm like, well, this is why I think having strategically building a personal brand and starting an online business is so remarkable. And it challenges you, and it forces you to grow, and it forces such like introspection because of all these things. And I just did an email about this, about how a simple free app changed my life. People would call it a little free app. And I'm like, yes, go on it and post every day for a year and watch what happens. Watch what you start realizing, watch what you start leaning into, what you start doing. It's incredibly, incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Dude, every single great thing that has happened to me professionally since I left Wall Street is because I hit send on a newsletter. That's it. Everything can be traced back to that. Us meeting.
Yes.
We both were asked to speak at an email marketing conference. Literally. That is how we fucking met. Like every single good thing that has happened to me is a result of putting myself out there. And I think that you raise a really interesting point. I think that terrifies Executive Eddie is that fishing thing, because you made me realize, like, I think I was almost looking at it from too narrow of a lens. It's like, well, this person needs to write about leadership and managing his team and that. And like, yeah, great. Like people need to want, but it's called social media.
Easy.
It's called, I guess if you're like, some people reading leadership books on the weekend, so like that will come easy to them. the classic example, people are like, well, I love fantasy football. I'm like, I don't need, like, does that mean I should start a fantasy football blog? I'm like, I don't know, maybe not a blog, but use that as your Trojan horse.
Try it. Start. Like, you're trying to run a business, right? Businesses are built on solutions to problems. Like, you have to have expertise in this thing. People sometimes don't realize the expertise they have because they're so in it and they just do it all the time. So yes, from a business perspective, Fortune 500 executive Eddie, if he loves talking about these things and he obviously has expertise, then yes, by all means, do that. If this person is at all, because some of the things that you and I have talked about, and this demographic is kind of not necessarily that they're looking for an exit, but like they're looking for other things. And so if that's the case, then I would definitely be like, yes, start the blog about fantasy football. If you're like trying to be very strategic and like be a thought leader to like get this promotion, then maybe your goal is here, you should stay in that direction. But if you're like, I want fulfillment, I want something else, then you should write about something else. You should make a video, whatever the medium is, about that thing, and lean in. And if it doesn't work, cool, then you do something else. You still have that proficiency, you have that muscle now built up that you know how to create, then you talk about something else.
And I think, this thing of this concept of personal brand, I love that, like, we have one, right?
Yes.
We have a resume, we have a name. Like, you hit, what's the first thing you do when you meet someone new? You Google them. Whether you care about your personal brand or not, you have one.
You have one. So then you can look to start getting more intentional. And when I say intentional, I don't mean that we're hiding things or like only trying to show the best side of ourselves. But that ties back into the original discussion we had about my feelings towards Instagram, is that I've just always been like, this is me. This is my life. Which I think if you take a step before that, is that I actually enjoy my life. The issue that people have is they don't enjoy their life. And then they're like, I'm going to try to put the best part on here so I can give validation for this life that I hate. And now I built a brand that I also hate because it's all fake. So like, go to therapy first and figure out how to start that life that you actually love. And then social media becomes documenting. It's not creating. It's literally just documenting your days. And what do you do?
Ooh. Oh man, that's like a dagger through the heart, man. It's like, if you gotta love you gotta love your life. And then then it's not content creation. It's just
documenting. You're literally just writing, sharing, and I will say, especially for the female listeners of this podcast, if you share your happiness, people are going to think you're a bitch. But guess what? They're going to think you're a bitch regardless. So you might as well lead with your joy and attract other people who want joy and who want to celebrate your joy. But it's going to be a thing. Jill and I talk about it all the time. It is a very, very big thing where women are just like, who does she think she is? Oh, she got a new car. And this all earned and it's worked hard for it. But women will hide that and they feel they have to lead with failures because other people are cut them down immediately. I don't see it as much with men.
Yeah.
But with women especially.
We just YOLO it.
I love that. I love it. I'm not here to be like, do less. Like, I will say that I think any female listeners listening are just like, wow, there's fear in that. Again, it's that like, if I do this, I'm going to be excommunicated. If I do this, I won't belong. And I'm going to tell you, one of the beautiful things about social media is that there's people out there for everyone, and you will attract your people, but you have to be willing to lead with that. And maybe there is a little bit of backlash, but mute them, block them, whatever, and move on.
And that's because women are quicker to cut other women down because of that socialization.
All of that. I think that there's a scarcity inherently of like, we can get like really deep with it, but I think there's inherently, men typically have resources, women don't. So if women think there's not enough to go around, they're like, oh, if you have resources, then I don't have resources. And so I'm going to not celebrate you, when in reality, like, it's fine. There's plenty. So I will say this is a big thing that Jill and I talk about. Jill and I look very different, right? If you're watching the podcast, you can see I've been able to navigate life in a very different way. Like androgyny confounds. Like I'm not like on this side or this side. And so like I'm privy to a lot of conversations, and I'm also privy to a lot of support that other females are not privy to. And so Jill and I had this conversation because she is very like female presenting. And I tell her that it's so important for her to share her wins and to share her successes, to be willing to take the arrows so that other people know it's okay. Like that's the only way that things change. Yeah, sometimes you got to be willing to go first with this. But I know that her sharing that message of joy will be more powerful for people that look like her than me sharing it. So like my role, I almost feel like when working with Jill, is like, I want to encourage her. I'm like, this is incredible what you can do.
Yeah.
Because people that look like you will be like, oh, it's okay. I saw Jill do it and now I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to lean into my joy. I'm willing to go and try to create a life intentionally that, and examine my life, create an examined life that is something that brings me joy.
It is amazing that all these questions, personal branding, Instagram, thought leadership, it reminds me a lot that it's fresh on my mind because we had this episode about great sex, and the TLDR of the great sex episode is make your partner feel seen, make your partner feel safe, make your partner feel loved. It's like, it's not about sex toys, swinging, like pornography. No, it's about none of that shit. No. And guess what? That's the secret to being a great parent too. Make your kid feel safe, make your kid feel seen, make your kid feel loved, make your kid feel appreciated, right? That's the secret of being a great friend. It's like
through everything.
It's almost like, God, if it's like we can make things so complicated. Like, what time should I post? And it's like,
it's easier to do that.
Yeah,
it's so much easier to look at those things because then we can remove responsibility and be like, oh, I didn't do well because the algorithm. I didn't do well because it was the wrong time. Instead of I didn't do well because I'm not happy with my life. Like that's like way harder.
Or I don't feel safe. Right.
Like that's like way harder to deal with than just be like, it was the algorithm. Like this is truly why I knew the conversation would go in this direction at some point, but this is at the heart. Exactly. I'm like,
if we just talk tactics, like we get our super long walks on the Strand, we never talk about, we talk about tactics for like 10 minutes,
exactly.
10%.
It's like a small thing.
And like, everything is like, are you happy? What's making you feel alive and all that? And are you open to share, like, we've talked a lot about the online stuff. What steps have you taken to deepen your own self-awareness on whatever blockers you might have or stories or so on?
I think that podcasts have been great just in terms of I get asked questions and I get to reflect on things. And so I've been, doing podcasts for years now. And so having these discussions and thinking about things. And that's also just kind of been my disposition just since I was a kid. I would just be like, but why?
Yeah.
And part of that, I think, is because I look this way and like growing up as a quote unquote minority, as female and Black and Puerto Rican and gay. And you're just like, always like, why? Why is this not okay? Like, I seem fine. I feel fine. But like, I'm marrying is not okay. So always asking these things. And I think that if I'm going to tie it into what we've been talking about and how these things have held up a mirror, is that they hold up a mirror. And it's like, am I happy with that? I don't love the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I flip that question and it's, could you see yourself doing this exact thing in 5 years? Would you be happy? And that's the mirror that social media holds up, because like you're sharing your life and you're like, do I hate this or am I happy? And I'm like, I could literally be doing the same thing for 5 years from now and I would be happy. Before we hopped on, Khe and I were talking about, I just moved 8 blocks up the street. Before this, I thought I was going to live in that charming little 2-bedroom for the rest of forever. And I was fine with that. I literally asked myself, could I do this forever? And I was like, yes. I got my gym downstairs. I got my cat. Life is great. And so things have changed for the better. Yeah. And it's for the better because every day I was asking myself, am I happy?
Yeah.
I have that mirror that's being held up and I see it in social media and it's like, do I want this? Do I want to keep doing this? Yes or no? No, change it. Yes, keep going.
Yeah. I think I love it. Like everything is a mirror, right? It's like the quote. I've been listening to a lot of Pema Chodron, who's kind of Buddhist monk, and she has this thing. It's like where your attention goes, your energy flows. Yep. And so I'm I'm a money warrior, even though I don't need to worry about money. And so it's not one of those worry and anxiety. It's not, you can't just like snap your fingers and say, Chase, stop worrying about money. Like, I wish it was that easy. But you can say like, oh, how interesting. I'm worrying about money right now. I'm thinking about money. Mm-hmm. And my energy is like thinking about my tax return or thinking about X or Y. And like that awareness kind of, it's like puts a hole in, like if there's a dam that's like leaking, it like plugs one hole with it. And you're like, okay. And now that the hole has been plugged for now, right? Because my deeper financial anxiety are things that I work through in therapy all the time, right? So they don't just go away. You hope you evolve and so on. But it is this
Starts with that awareness, big time.
And I wouldn't have thought of, originally we had talked about making this episode, is Instagram making you crazy, right?
Yeah.
And I think if Instagram is making you crazy, which it has for times for me, and I know a lot of listeners will empathize that, it's not Instagram that's making you crazy. It's the mirror that it's shining back on you. That is making you crazy, and that's the thing to explore, right?
That's what you go
Status games and so on.
All of that. So, we hopped on the episode and you were like, you would change the question. And I was like, cool. But also I know we're going to be talking about the same stuff because it's all the same, right? We know it's all the same. And I use Instagram as a vehicle for me.
Yeah.
So I use it to help people live, create, their best life. But I don't sell that because most people don't really know that they want that. So I'll talk about Instagram, and then once they get into my Instagram courses and things like that, they see that it's the bigger things that we're going after. And it's always been the case. With movement as physical therapists, it's it's an introduction. It's a vehicle for people realizing their potential and being hopeful about things and going after things. Instagram is no different. And I knew that whether the question is personal brand or Instagram, they're all just vehicles. Right? So it's cool, we can talk about that.
Examine life.
There you go. I was waiting for it.
There you go. Yes. All right. We gotta end on we gotta end on that.
So good.
That was so good. Fist bump. Fist bump. Yeah, we gotta end on that. Oh man. Shante, you're
so
a gift.
Good, Khe.
You are a gift.
This was great, man.
You are a shining light. So I thank you so much. Where can people go learn, go follow this
sure.
Beautiful, this light that is healthy. It's like Instagram positivity.
Well, you could come on the gram if you want, and I'm the Movement Maestro over there. Maestro is Maestro. Like Khe said, I'll put in the show notes. Or website is the same. Branding is the same across everything. So the Movement Maestro. Google it, put it somewhere, and it'll pop up, and you can hit me up. I'm going to be completely honest. I am not good with email. I hate email, so I usually don't get back. But if you send me a DM, I will get back to you in 30 seconds. So it is what it is.
There you go. Thank you so much. This has been amazing and the best ending ever.
So good. Thank you, truly.